There was a note waiting for me in the microwave. Folded. No envelope. Wedged between the rotating glass plate and a cold, half-eaten bowl of quinoa, she must have reheated and never finished. At first I thought it was a receipt. I almost threw it out. But then I saw my name on it. Eliot, don't make this bigger than it is. I need it tonight. No signature. No explanation. No return time. Just that. I stood in the middle of the kitchen holding that paper like it was a live wire. I kept rereading it, thinking maybe the words would rearrange themselves into something innocent. Like maybe I needed tonight meant she went to her sister's book club or needed a walk or joined a pottery class. Something normal. But there's nothing normal about hiding a handwritten note in a microwave. You don't do that unless you want to be caught, but you're too much of a coward to do it face to face. I checked the driveway. Her car was gone. The blue sedan she swore she hated but never traded in. I checked our shared calendar. Nothing listed. No event, no appointment, no dentist, no dinner with coworkers. I checked the bedroom. The same cardigan she always wore to real meetings was hanging on the chair. So if this wasn't about work, what was it? The house was still warm from her being here. Her coffee mug was in the sink. One earring on the hallway table. I even smelled her hairspray in the bathroom. She'd left less than 20 minutes before I got home. I stood there, holding the note, staring at the blinking blue numbers on the microwave like they were mocking me. 6:43 p.m. I didn't call her. I didn't text. Instead, I opened the notepad app on my phone and typed 3 words. Don't come back. I didn't send it. Not yet. I just stared at it, thumb hovering over the button, heart racing like I was the one doing something wrong. I'm not an aggressive guy. I don't raise my voice. I say thank you to cashiers, and I sort the recycling properly. I don't chase drama. I avoid confrontation like it's an allergy. But there's something about being left a microwave note by the woman who sleeps next to you every night that wakes up a different version of you. A version that starts opening drawers. A version that checks phone bills, credit card logs, location history. A version who's done playing the understanding husband. And when I found the second note, yes, there was another one, I realized something else. This wasn't her first Secret Tuesday. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I laid in bed with my eyes closed, my back turned toward her side of the mattress, still faintly warm from earlier. The silence was too loud, if that makes sense. Every creak in the floorboards downstairs made me tense up. Every passing car had me squinting out the blinds. I wasn't waiting for her. I was preparing for her. For whatever she'd say. For whatever I might say. I didn't know which was worse. But she never came home. It was just me, the microwave note, and 1,000 unanswered questions. Sometime around 3:30 a.m., I gave up pretending to rest. I stood up, turned the pillow over out of habit, and felt something. Crinkled. That's when I found it, the second note. Folded perfectly, tucked inside the pillowcase, under the spot where she normally lays her head. This one was longer. If you find this, it means I didn't come back tonight. Or maybe I did, but you were asleep and I didn't want to wake you. Either way, please don't dig into this. It's not about us. I'm just remembering who I was before all this. Before groceries and laundry and calendars. I just needed space to feel something that wasn't routine. Don't hate me. Please. My hands were trembling. I read it 3 times just to be sure it said what I thought it did. And every time I finished, I felt more nauseous. Not about the betrayal, that hadn't even fully set in yet, but about the tone of the letter. She wrote it like she was gone for a weekend retreat. Like this was a break from yoga, not a marriage. And the part that gutted me most? The line, "It's not about us." That's the kind of thing you say when you've already rewritten the story in your head. When you've decided the person you've been with for over a decade has become background noise, a houseplant you occasionally water out of obligation. The note wasn't a confession. It was a rationalization. I dropped it on the floor like it burned. At 5 a.m., I finally left the house. I didn't even know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there, not surrounded by the smell of her shampoo and the ghost of her empty chair at the table. I ended up parked in front of the lake. The same lake we used to walk around in the fall, back when we still looked each other in the eyes. The fog hadn't lifted yet. The water was still, dead still. I thought about calling someone. My brother, maybe. But what do you even say? Hey, remember that woman I built my life around? Yeah, turns out she's rediscovering herself on someone else's time clock. Probably with a glass of wine and a man who wears cologne I can't afford. Instead, I just sat there with my breath fogging up the windshield, watching the sunrise by myself like some widower from a sad movie. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but I couldn't. I wasn't angry yet. I wasn't even heartbroken yet. I was just suspended. Like the crash already happened, but the pain hadn't reached my body. And then I made a decision. If she was finding herself, so would I. But my version wouldn't be written in notes hidden in household appliances. Mine would be louder, colder, and much harder to come back from. By the time I returned home later that morning, the house was still quiet, still dark. It felt like someone had peeled the soul out of it while I was gone. Her car wasn't in the driveway. No sign she'd ever come back. I stood on the front steps for a full minute before I went inside, like I was afraid of triggering a trap. The first thing I noticed was the missing photo frame. It used to hang near the kitchen, one of those corny collage-style frames with snapshots from our 10th anniversary trip to Asheville. Gone. Just a square of cleaner paint where it used to be. Not broken. Not smashed. Just removed. Like she couldn't stand to look at it anymore. Or maybe she took it with her, like a souvenir from a life she was slipping out of. I walked upstairs and checked the closet. 3 of her coats were missing. Some of her jewelry too. Not all of it. Just the pieces she used to wear when she wanted to feel beautiful. Her red heels. That perfume she only wore when we went out to restaurants that made you whisper. The tiny details were louder than screaming. But I didn't call her. I didn't text. I didn't even want to. That version of me. The pleading, hopeful, heart-on-the-sleeve guy. He was somewhere curled up in a corner of my brain. But I'd locked the door and turned out the lights. What I needed now was proof. Not for her. For myself. Because I was still clinging to the hope that maybe this was emotional. Temporary. Harmless. That's when I decided to check our router logs. See, I'm not completely helpless with tech. I might not be flashy, but I know how our home Wi-Fi works. Every device that connects to our network leaves a footprint, timestamps, locations, MAC addresses. I logged into the admin dashboard and began scrolling. Most of it was routine. My work laptop, the smart TV, the kid's tablet. But then I saw something odd. A device I didn't recognize had connected to our network 5 nights ago, briefly, for less than 10 minutes. Its device ID had a name, Luca's iPhone. My stomach dropped. I stared at it like it might vanish if I blinked. The name from the email draft. Luca. This wasn't a suspicion anymore. This was concrete. She had him in our house. In our kitchen. Maybe even in our bed. And I didn't even feel anger yet. Not really. Just a strange, raw numbness, like standing barefoot in snow. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was noticing the tiny red light on the bookshelf camera. We'd installed a security cam last year after a package got stolen. A discreet little thing disguised as a hardcover novel. It was motion-triggered, uploaded to the cloud. I never paid it much attention until now. I opened the app and started scrolling through the footage. Most clips were harmless. Me grabbing cereal. Her cooking. Kids running through the house. But then I landed on a clip from 4 nights ago. 11:28 p.m. The camera activated. The living room. She walked in, wearing the red heels. Behind her, a man. Mid-30s. Beard. Leather jacket. Casual confidence. He didn't hesitate. He moved like someone familiar with the place. She laughed at something he whispered. They stopped right in front of the couch. Kissed. Not soft. Not guilty. Hungry. I paused the footage. I just sat there, staring at the screen, listening to my own breathing. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't cried. I hadn't broken anything. But I knew what I had to do now. I clicked download. Saved the file. Backed it up twice. Put it on a flash drive. No dramatic folder name. No angry labels. Just a date. A timestamp. A moment frozen in digital clarity. She thought I wouldn't find out. She thought she was playing the lead role in some complicated, tragic romance. She had no idea the quiet guy in the background was about to become the author. I didn't touch the flash drive for the next 12 hours. I kept it in my sock drawer, underneath a pair I never wear, like a secret I was almost too afraid to use. But the file burned in the back of my mind. It didn't whisper. It screamed. Not because I hadn't accepted what I saw, but because I didn't know what to do with it. What action could make her feel the rupture she caused without turning me into the villain? Because that's what people like Marin do. They build an escape hatch made of excuses, pad it with phrases like, I lost myself, and you stopped seeing me. Then crawl through it like they were forced to leave. If I blew up or acted out, I'd be handing her the justification she needed. I'd be the angry, bitter, boring husband she could point to and say, "See? That's why I had to leave." So I did something quiet, almost elegant. I printed a single still from the security footage, one frame only. The moment her lips were just inches from his. You couldn't see much of his face, just enough to recognize the beard. It was blurry, imperfect, but that made it worse. Like a half-remembered nightmare. Then I walked into her art studio. It's the only room in the house I rarely entered. It smelled like varnish and citrus and those weird essential oils she swore helped her concentrate. I placed the photo underneath the glass of her supply tray, where she keeps her watercolor brushes. No note. No caption. Just the image. Waiting for her to find it when she next picked up a brush. That would be my message to her. But I wasn't done. I had something for him, too. Tracking down Luca wasn't difficult. Her email draft included a first name and a partial signature line from a previous forwarded message. Luca N. Architecture and planning consultant. Combine that with our city, and one search later, I had him. Luca Navarro. 2 corporate interviews on YouTube. 1 profile picture on his firm's website. That smug, soft-spoken kind of man who probably corrects your grammar while making you feel like he's doing you a favor. His firm's contact page had a general inbox. Nothing personal. No direct line. So I got creative. I printed another copy of the still image and mailed it to his office. No envelope. Just folded inside a blank sheet of white paper. Anonymous. Untraceable. No fingerprints. No note. No threat. Just a mirror held up to his face. He'd know exactly what moment that was. And exactly who had sent it. Now, you might think this is all beneath me. Petty. Childish. But let me be clear, I wasn't looking for revenge. Not yet. This wasn't vengeance. This was tension. I wanted them to wonder. I wanted their pulses to quicken the next time their phones buzzed. I wanted their spontaneous meetings to feel dangerous. I wanted every glass of wine they poured to taste like guilt. And it worked. 2 days later, Marin came home early from work. Earlier than I expected. She didn't say anything when she walked in. Just set her bag down softly, like she didn't want the house to hear. I watched her from the hallway as she went into the studio. 3 minutes later, I heard her whisper my name. Not loud. Not urgent. Just a whisper. Eliot. I didn't respond. I wanted her to feel what I felt. Alone in the same space. Surrounded by objects that meant nothing anymore. I watched her sit on the edge of her stool and stared down at the photo. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just folded her arms tightly and stared. Frozen. Then her phone buzzed on the counter. One look at her face told me everything. She was reading something. And she wasn't happy. Luca got his mail. And I got exactly what I wanted. But what she did next, I didn't see coming. She didn't mention the photo. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not even in passing. She moved around the house like it didn't exist, like nothing had shifted. But I saw the difference. The way her voice got softer, her movements more deliberate. Like she was controlling every breath, afraid to trigger a landmine. By Friday evening, I couldn't take the silence anymore. I was sitting at the dining table, fake reading an old paperback, when she walked in from her studio. Her hair was pulled back tight, the way she wore it when she was preparing for uncomfortable conversations. She sat across from me, folded her hands neatly, and said without flinching, "You saw the video, didn't you?" I didn't move, didn't speak. Her eyes flicked to the side, just for a second, then came back to me. "I figured," she said, like she was confirming a weather report. "And the photo in my tray, was that supposed to scare me?" Still, I said nothing. That's when she smiled. Not with her mouth, just with her eyes. A calculated twitch. The kind of expression actors use on stage before delivering their monologue. And I swear to you, what she said next nearly made me lose grip of reality. It was a concept piece. Performance art. I actually blinked. What? Her tone didn't change. She spoke like this was a perfectly reasonable explanation. The camera footage. The kiss. It was part of an experimental project Luca and I were developing. You think I'd be that careless if I was cheating? I knew the camera was there, Eliot. We chose the angle. I stared at her in stunned silence. Not because I believed her, God no, but because of how confidently she said it. Like she'd rehearsed the speech in front of the mirror a dozen times. Like she wanted me to question my own memory. "You invited him to our house," I said slowly. "To kiss you for art." She nodded once. Crisp. Precise. It's about domestic disruption. The hidden theater inside suburban life. We're presenting it next month in the gallery on Fairmont. You can come, If you're over this by then. I nearly laughed. I wanted to, but I didn't. Because for the first time in weeks, I wasn't just angry or hurt. I was scared. Not of her lies, but of the calm in her lies. She wasn't trying to justify anything. She was rewriting the narrative, making me the paranoid husband who misinterpreted everything. I could already hear her friends saying it. He's always been controlling. You know how he is. And I realized something chilling. She wasn't hiding an affair anymore. She was building an alibi. That weekend, she made pancakes. She cleaned the porch. She laughed at the news. She even suggested we go for a walk, like old times. It was all a show, a new performance. Only this time, I wasn't sure who the audience was. Me? Luca? Her students? Or someone else entirely? I knew I had to be careful now. I couldn't confront her again. She'd weaponize it. Use it as another scene in her story, the fragile man unraveling. No, if she wanted a stage, I'd give her one. But it wouldn't be hers. I opened a private browser tab, set up a new account, different name, different email, different voice, and I began writing. Not a diary, not a confession, a record, a slow drip of truth. And when I hit publish, people would read. Because if she wanted to be a character in a play, I'd let her. But I'd be the one writing the ending. I didn't expect it to matter. When I created the anonymous blog, it was more for me than anyone else. A digital pressure valve. A place to say things I couldn't say out loud without sounding unhinged. I changed names, locations, scrambled dates. It wasn't about revenge. It was about preservation, of memory, of truth, of what it felt like to drown silently in your own home. But after the second post, titled, she called it performance art, I called it evidence. I woke up to nearly 400 comments. People asking questions. Others sharing stories. A few trying to guess who I was, where I lived. The attention should have scared me, but it didn't. It felt like being seen again. Not pitied. Not loved. Just noticed. The comments poured in, some supportive, some skeptical, but one stuck out. It was just a burner username, Glassmask88, and all they wrote was, "She's done this before. Want proof?" At first I thought it was a troll, but I clicked, and there it was. A private message waiting. Inside were 4 attachments. Images. No subject line. No message body. The first one hit like a brick. It was Marin. Not posing. Not smiling. Not performing. She was sitting on a patio somewhere. Different lighting, different jacket, but unmistakably her. She was leaning across a table toward a different man, not Luca, but someone taller, with ash blonde hair and the kind of skin that burns easily. Her hand was on his wrist. The same gesture she used with me when she was trying to pull a secret out of me. Intimate. Familiar. The second photo was indoors. A bookstore, maybe. She was standing by a shelf, mid-laugh, holding the same man's scarf in her hand like she'd just taken it from him. Like a game. The third showed them outside what looked like a motel. I stared at them for a long time. Not because I couldn't believe it, but because I could. The timestamps on the images were from 18 months ago, back when she said she was in Boston for a 3-day art symposium. I even remembered packing her bag for that trip. She told me not to fold her scarves, just roll them so they wouldn't crease. She packed the red one. That same scarf was in photo 4, wrapped around the wrist of the blonde man like a bracelet. So much for Boston. My pulse was pounding now. I messaged Glassmask88 back, asking who they were, how they got the photos, how they knew her. No reply. Not that day. Not the next. The account disappeared 48 hours later. But I'd seen enough. This wasn't just betrayal. It was pattern. A play she'd performed before, maybe more than once. Different cast, same script. The rebirth story. The mysterious man. The conveniently timed creative excuses. And I was the fool who kept believing I was the first one she'd ever done it to. The worst part? I started wondering if I ever really knew her. Like, at all. Had our whole life been real? Or had she just been improvising until she got bored? I went downstairs, numb. She was in the kitchen, making tea. Acting like someone who didn't have old motel photos with strangers floating around the internet. I stood there in the doorway, watching her pour the hot water slowly like she had all the time in the world. Then she looked up at me, just for a second, and said, "You're quiet lately. Writing again?" I froze. She shouldn't know that. I hadn't left any tabs open. I hadn't used my name. I hadn't even logged in from the home Wi-Fi. But she knew. Somehow she knew. That's when I realized. This wasn't just a performance. It was surveillance. And I wasn't just in her play. I was on her stage. I didn't say a word for the rest of that evening. I watched her move around the kitchen with surgical ease, gliding from drawer to drawer, stirring her tea with that same little ceramic spoon she always claimed tasted different than the metal ones. She acted like nothing had changed, like the last 6 days hadn't cracked our lives wide open. But her comment about me writing again, it didn't leave me. I told myself it was a guess. That maybe she was fishing. Maybe she noticed me spending more time on my phone. Maybe I was just being paranoid. But paranoia doesn't explain what I found the next morning. I woke up at 6:11 a.m. and checked the blog's admin panel like I always did. I wasn't expecting much. I hadn't posted anything new since the photos. But as I scrolled through the settings, something hit me. There was a login at 3:04 a.m. Not mine. Different IP. Different browser. Traced to a VPN node in a nearby city. But that wasn't even the worst part. The user hadn't posted or deleted anything. No comments. No edits. Just one small change, almost imperceptible. They'd bookmarked a draft. One I hadn't even finished writing. One that still sat unfinished in the back end, untitled, with only a few sentences typed out. I think she's building a second version of me. One she can control. One who never speaks too loudly. A mannequin of a man. That was it. That's all I had written so far. Someone had read it and saved it. I stared at the screen, feeling like I was being watched through it. That line wasn't public. No one else had seen it, which meant someone had gone digging. And I already knew who. Maren was no longer just reacting. She was intercepting. She hadn't confronted me because she didn't need to. She was 2 steps ahead, reading me in real time like a script she'd already memorized. I was a variable she was managing. Nothing more. But why? Why not just leave? Why not take her secrets, her artist lies, and her cologne-drenched affairs and disappear like everyone else who cheats with a clean conscience? That question haunted me for hours. Until I found the paperwork. It was in the filing cabinet in the garage, tucked inside an envelope marked Tax Prep Archive. I wasn't looking for it. I was just avoiding her, looking for old receipts to distract myself. Instead, I found a copy of a trust. Her name. My name. One beneficiary. A man I'd never heard of. Julian Marrow. 42. Listed as creative consultant. No family link. No explanation. But somehow, if both of us were incapacitated, he inherited everything. Not our kids. Not our sister. Not even a charitable fallback. Julian. I Googled him. Nothing at first. But digging deeper, using cached profiles and metadata hidden in old art show flyers, I found something chilling. Julian Marrow was a pseudonym. One that Maren had used before. To sign pieces. To write essays. To publish anonymous critiques of gallery culture under a male persona. But on one obscure listing, tied to an experimental residency fund, Julian Marrow had a headshot. It was Luca. Same beard. Same eyes. Different name. So there it was. Not just cheating. Not just lying. An entire identity. She wasn't just performing inside our marriage. She was producing it. Directing it. And now I was starting to realize I'd never actually been a husband to her. I was a prop. A supporting actor in a narrative I never auditioned for. And now, with my anonymous writing exposed, with her logging into accounts I hadn't shared, with paper trails linking our assets to a stranger with a fake name, I had one last move. Not loud. Not angry. Just decisive. I packed a duffel bag. My laptop. My flash drive. The trust copy. And I left the house without locking the door. I wasn't running. I was giving her one last scene to play out without me. And waiting for the curtain to fall. For 2 days, I stayed in a small coastal town 90 miles away. The kind of place where no one asks why you're alone at breakfast or why you sit with your back to the wall at every cafe. I spent the first night staring at the ceiling fan of a motel room with peeling wallpaper and the second walking the beach with my shoes in my hand, like some cliché from a grief movie. But I didn't cry. That surprised me. I thought I would. I thought I'd collapse under the weight of it all. Betrayal, manipulation, the slow erosion of 13 years of trust. But I didn't. I just exhaled. Because once I stepped outside that house, outside her story, I realized something vital. It wasn't my story that was broken. It was hers. The third day, I drove back. Not to argue. Not to explain. Just to finish what needed to be finished. I arrived around noon. Her car wasn't in the driveway. I parked, walked inside like I still lived there, which, legally, I did, and grabbed exactly 3 things. The flash drive. My journals. The kids' handprints in clay we made 2 winters ago. Everything else could stay. I left her a note. Not dramatic. Not cruel. Just a folded square of paper in the center of the table, weighted with a spoon. This time, I'm writing the ending. No scene. No applause. No return. Then I drove straight to a lawyer. A woman named Sylvia with a firm voice and a no-nonsense smile. I gave her everything. The trust papers, the footage, the emails. She didn't flinch once. Just nodded, then said, "We can build your exit. Clean, quiet, legal." And we did. In the following weeks, I rented a modest apartment downtown. Top floor, small balcony, just enough space for silence. I took a consulting job with a company I once passed over. Nothing fancy, but I worked on my own schedule, under my own name. No more passwords she could guess. No more accounts she could breach. The blog? I shut it down. I didn't need it anymore. Instead, I started something new. A podcast, actually. About emotional resilience. About navigating the aftermath of betrayal, not with rage, but with awareness. I didn't name names. I didn't seek pity. I just told the truth, in layers, in pieces, in ways that helped strangers find language for their own bruises. And people listened. It grew slowly, then quickly. Messages poured in. Stories from people who had also lived in someone else's performance. People who had been used as props, edited out of their own lives. But I wasn't one of them anymore. Marin never reached out after the separation papers arrived. No dramatic calls. No last confession. No attempt to rewrite the final chapter. And that silence? That was her loudest line yet. It told me everything I needed to know. She'd moved on to another script. Another stage. Maybe another version of Julian. But I didn't move on. I moved forward. Today, I water my own plants. I cook too much pasta. I write in the mornings and walk in the evenings, and sometimes, just sometimes, I catch my own reflection in the window and realize I don't look like the background character anymore. I look like the author. And that feels like a happy ending to me.